Yeah, it's mindset cafe, we all about that mindset. Gotta stay focused, never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devin, and we are joined today and honored to have him on the podcast. Chad Hufford. He is a best-selling author. He is the founder of Veritas Wealth Management. It is a financial planning firm in Anchorage, Alaska, which, I mean, it's crazy because they're managing over $5 million in assets. And he has 17 years of experience and a ton of background in biochemistry, athletic training. So you already know we're going to make some of those connections between his wealth management and fitness and, athletics. So along with that, he has some sports psychology to help him to really build some habits and stuff with people. So, Chad, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to have this conversation, encourage your audience, and really help empower them to live a more abundant life. And not that anybody's counting, but it's 500 million. So $500 million that we have under management. So,
oh no, I saw that number and I was like, that is impressive. That's crazy when it's written out, when it says 500 million, you're like, oh, crazy. But then you add all the zeros and you're like, oh, wow, that's crazy. But let's start off with your story. How did you get inspired to pursue financial planning, and where did your journey really start to begin?
My journey started a long time before I realized it started. I grew up in the financial industry. My dad was in the financial world, and I just saw how much it affected people's lives. And I actually got my degree in biochemistry. I was pursuing a career in medicine. And ever since I was 19, Devin, my why has always been to empower people to live a better life in the most full version of themselves. But I thought I was going to do that through medicine. But I realized that very early growing up that people's confidence or their anxiety, whichever one they're experiencing in finance, has a tendency to have a ripple effect into every area of their life, because finance is a part of our days. It's a part of our life, whether you like it or not. Much like health and fitness, the only thing it takes for finances to deteriorate is to ignore it. Because just like your waistline and your cardio, they're not going to get better on accident. Your financial situation won't get better on accident either. So I just saw finances as a way to not just enhance people's financial trajectory and have them have more confidence with money, but really just live a better life.
No, that's so awesome. And it's funny because, you're using some of that terminology that I love to use. You mentioned, your why, right? Because a lot of people will go with, what is your purpose, or what is your, reason for doing this? But the terminology using, what is your why? Like, that's so important to me, because it's like, why do you want to do this? Why is this going to improve your life, right? When you can begin to ask yourself that question, with starting with why, and continue to ask, but why is that the answer? And go a couple levels down, you start to find, journeys like you did with yourself, where it's like, this wasn't even your original trajectory, right? I mean, mine with fitness, that wasn't even my original game plan. I told people when I was a personal trainer, like, this is the best college job ever, right? And that's now led to owning a gym, owning a franchise, and, and going crazier with it. But it's so cool that you use that. And then you even talked about the ripple effect, because the ripple effect is so important to realize that everything that you do in your day has a ripple effect on someone. Your interactions with people, your, conversations with people, anything you do for your business has a ripple effect on your family, your team's family, and so forth. So with that being said, when did you really start getting into like the understanding the mindset behind it, instead of just being like, oh, I'm a financial planner, and really understanding from a different perspective, like, there is a lot more depth to what you're doing and the benefits and ripple effect you're having on others?
Well, let me just back up a little bit, because what you said, that ripple effect, I think is really important, because your life does not happen in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. Everything you do not only has a ripple effect in the lives of everybody around you, but even in your own life. Something as simple as hitting the snooze button at the beginning of the day. You're starting your day with a compromise, and you may not realize it, but now you've got less time, and you're probably less proactive. You're probably more likely to eat an unhealthy breakfast, or to be short with the kids, or short with your spouse, or speed on the way to work. You're starting out your day working from behind, and just people don't, it seems so little. Snooze button, it's 8 minutes, no big deal. But it's those little things that have a big cumulative effect. And going back to that question of why, I just see that finances it's just a tool. If I wasn't doing this, and just like you, I use personal training to put myself through college, and I trained Olympic athletes and professional athletes, worked with a lot of fighters, had some military contracts. But I would if I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing some sort of coaching. But what I have found, Devin, is that finances, for me, is the most powerful tool I can use to transform somebody else's life. And I realized that very early on in my career, to actually get back to the question that you were asking, because I got licensed in 2007 at the very beginning of the biggest financial meltdown since the Great Depression. And stats, figures, charts, graphs, education, information, none of that stuff mattered anymore, because people weren't living out of rational thought process. People were panicked. This world seemed to be melting down, and there was so much fear and anxiety that people were living out of their fear center. Their amygdala was running their thought life. And I just saw that, man, you just can't throw charts at people and say, oh, the stock market's always come back, or here's what the S&P 500 has done during these little crashes. I mean, it came back. And if you put $1,000 in at the peak of the market in 2007, it'd be worth about $6,000 today, and you look like a genius. But that $1,000 would have been more like $300 and something in 2009. You would have felt and looked like an idiot. And there's a huge disconnect, and you couldn't prove it to people. So it really was a mindset thing. And the people who survived that time, and the people who've been with us and who've survived many other market panics, economic meltdowns, crashes since then, they're not the smartest, the most well-educated. They're not the most clairvoyant. They're the people that have the right temperament. They're the people that have the discipline and the perseverance. And that's my job, to be a source of resilience and discipline when somebody else starts to feel like it's waning a little bit, feel a little weakness, feeling like, maybe this isn't the right path for me. I mean, you get it with personal training, right? Like, it's just, hey, just do a few more reps, man. I know it hurts, but these are the reps.
No, it's so true. I mean, my clients, now it's not as much since, I have a gym and it's a little bit different. But when I was doing personal training, my clients would always, be like, you're so tough. I'm like, I don't yell at you. They're like, yeah, but just you looking at me, like just staring at me. It's like, because I'm waiting for you to finish the set. Like, I know you're tired. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, where you're going to finish the set. You already know that. I already know that. So I'm just going to stand here and I'll wait for you. Right. And then there's like, oh man, like, you have no sympathy. It's like, no, like you have your goal. We both know how we're going to get to that goal. Like, you could feel tired. That's fine. Right. You can be emotional. That's fine. But I'm going to make sure that we stick to this plan. Right. But I do want to take a quick tangent, and then I want to bring it back to what you're kind of saying right there, because actually there's a cool little thing. And I think just from what you're saying right now, I feel like you're going to be able to dive really deep into it. But side tangent real quick. You mentioned, the market crash in 07, 08. And what I've heard, and obviously, we're living it, but do you think that obviously that was like a market crash? It was plain and simple in front of everyone's eyes. But since then, people think that there hasn't been a recession or, a Great Depression or anything like that. But what I've heard is that right now we're in like the silent recession. How do you feel about that?
So from a measurable market standpoint, since that time, we've had at least 4 significant market crashes of at least 20% or more.
Oh, wow.
But I gotta be honest, man. I don't really care what the weather is. So, whether we're in or not in a recession or a silent recession, it doesn't really matter. And just going back to like your personal training, like, okay, you didn't get much sleep last night, or there's a lot of stress at work or whatever. There's a lot of excuses to get off the track or to try to make unnecessary changes. But we've got to be really crystal clear about what we're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And that's where our focus needs to be, on what we can control not what we can't control. Whether or not in a recession, man, I don't mean to just be rude, but I really don't care, and I don't know.
No, I mean that's completely fine, right? Like for me, because I've heard that, right? And the way I've always viewed things is we may be, but like is it affecting me directly? And if it is, then what can I do about it? Right? Like
And
I'll go for it.
as a better question, I mean, that's a good question. It's a good place to start. A better question, or another question, I should say, is does this affect my long-term goals? Does
Right.
this affect where I'm trying to go? If not, I probably shouldn't change anything. So you may wake up one day and man, you just feel no motivation, or somebody on TV says that this new electro butt snapper thing is the new best workout. You're like, well, today's squat day. And my goals haven't changed. So I don't care what somebody on Instagram is talking about. I'm going to squat today because that's what I know I need to do to get to my long-term goals. And if your goals haven't changed, your tactics and pathway might need to be refined, but they shouldn't be drastically shifted just because your outside environment is changing. Does that
No,
make
100.
sense?
No, 100%. And that's the cool thing with like bringing it to like a fitness analogy, because when you say the same thing in a different area of your life, you're like, well, yeah, that makes sense, right? But when you talk about it, let's say with finances versus fitness, right? People have a very strong emotional tie to the same decision they would make differently in a different area of their life, right? Like,
Yep.
but like for me, for example, like when everything was kind of crashing around COVID, like that honestly is like almost more exciting because like if you plan right, like you should have a little bit, at least in my opinion, you should have a little bit of funds to buy on those dips because it's always gonna come back up at some point, right?
You're absolutely right. So there's really only two scenarios. Either the market goes up with you out of it,
Mm-hmm.
or it goes down and you get to buy the best companies in the world on sale.
Exactly.
So the biggest risk in investments is not being in them. And when I say investments, I'm not talking about crypto and money market. I'm talking about owning actual companies in the form of mutual funds, owning equities where you literally have a chance to own some of the biggest, best, and most profitable companies that have ever existed on this planet. Are they going to go down temporarily? Absolutely. But people have to remember that the advance is long-term. The advance is permanent. The declines are temporary. And recessions come and go, and they eventually become blips on the radar. But the biggest risk is you waiting on the sidelines, not investing because of a fear of something that will eventually get here, but you don't want to try to time it. So timing in something is way more important than timing. You mentioned how people add complexity into things unnecessarily. Simple is often hard. So a lot of times, Devin, we add complexity into a situation to give ourselves distance from the responsibility of acting. So let's use a fitness analogy. It could be somebody who's like, man, I read this thing. Like some people say the best time to work out is first thing in the morning because it gets your metabolism going and you're working out fasted, this and that. Other people say, well, your body is more hydrated and later in the day. And they spend all their time researching, trying to figure out when is the best time to work out. Meanwhile, they haven't worked out in 3 months because they're trying to figure out the best time to work out. And they're confused by all the conflicting information. Get in the freaking gym and move around. Like that's what
Right.
you need to do. And when it comes to investing, time in the gym beats timing the gym. Time in your investments beats timing your investment.
Right.
Sorry, I'm
No,
getting a little worked up because I'm passionate about this
no,
stuff.
no, but it is so true. And I believe me, I mean, I could speak firsthand and bringing it back to like a fitness and financial aspect, right? Most people, they go to the gym and they want immediate results. It's almost like they think like fitness is day trading. You hear these crazy day trading stories and you're like, wow, I want to do that. So they want this bodybuilding, physique in a day or two. It doesn't happen like that, right? You have to be consistent, and it's just like time under tension for muscle build. It's time in investment for financial build, right? And so I've learned that firsthand because, I did have clients that were day trading, one or two of them. And with my whole, blackjack, I like that. And I was like, well, this sounds kind of fun. And then I was like, man, this is boring, right? Because I didn't end up doing day trading. I was like, okay, I'm going to buy this. It's supposed to do this. And then I'm going to sell it. And I was like, damn, I have to wait. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take it out of this, put it in something else. And then, I just kept losing money that way. And then I all of a sudden had the epiphany within myself. I was like, just do what the actual people are telling you. Because I had other clients that were similar to yourself, way back when, and they're old school and they're like, buy this, buy it, and just hold it. And I was like, but nothing happens. Like, I want to see crazy results now,
Yeah.
but then it was like, that's how it is. Just like the gym, it's not always the most glamorous, it's not always the most exciting. It is just, you have to put in the work, or you have to spend the time in that thing to get the result. And it's simple, but it's hard to just do that simple thing of just wait or just keep doing it, right? Like lifting, you have to keep going in day after day, even though you're not seeing results immediately.
People who find success in business, who find success in relationships, who find success in fitness, and people who are successful financially have a penchant for mastering the mundane, for doing
Right.
the boring stuff consistently that most people only do sporadically. And you're absolutely right. And just let's go back to a fitness analogy. Nobody wants to squat and deadlift. It's boring. It's not sexy. It's exciting. The bars are rusted. Sometimes they're bent. And there's machines in there that everybody's clamoring for, that they got electrodes hooked up to them. They have fancy screens and this and that. And they cost $20,000. It's nuts what you can spend on fitness equipment these days.
Oh, yeah.
The people in the best shape in the gym are the ones sitting in the squat rack or doing barbell work. It's simple. It's uncomfortable. It's slow. It's methodical, and it flat out works. And the same thing goes to finance. And really what we're coming down to, you didn't say this, but we're both aiming at the same point. It's shortcuts. That's what people want, is a shortcut. And just to be really clear to the audience, day trading, cryptocurrency, all that stuff, that's not investing. That's gambling. And a lot of people have taken gambling and speculating and confused it with investing, because when you invest, you're actually buying something that produces something for you. You don't have to sell it in order to make money. If you have to sell this item in order to make money, then you're just trading. It is gambling. It's price speculation. It's not true investing. When you own companies, when you own real estate, it's something you buy, and regardless what the price does, if you have a good investment, it pays you to own it while the price fluctuates. That's how a true investment should work. And it is boring and it takes time and it doesn't happen quickly. But if you will give it time, it will work for you. And that's everything in life. Don't take the shortcuts.
No, it's true. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I do own some Bitcoin, but at the same time, I consider that not an investment. That is a gamble, right? And the only reason, like I say that, obviously, that is, if I lose it, I'm not going to be hurting. I don't have a crazy amount in it, right? But it's one of those things where it's like, who knows? Just like if I go to the casino and I play blackjack and I hit 21, who knows? But you can't consider that, because how I tell people is, I've had a few conversations with clients, or even like my barber, like he was telling me he was going to invest at, pretty much his whole investment into Bitcoin. I was like, don't do that, man. I was like, I'm not even, the most financial savvy when it comes to investments, but I could tell you that it's not an investment if the only way for you to make money is by other people buying it, in which increases the price. Then you could take it out, because then think so what is your money really now? The growth of your money is someone else's dollar, right?
And somebody else's opinion on what you own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Not to pick on anybody that has some Bitcoin and things like that, but it can't make up the core of what you do.
Right.
You even said it, it's entertainment. Like for you, you're realizing this is entertainment, and it's okay as long as people are clear on that. I mean, shoot, man, when we're recording this, we're a few days before Christmas. I'm going to have some pumpkin pie on Christmas. I know that is not a healthy choice, but it's a very small part of my overall diet, and it's going to be a blip on the radar. It's not going to define how I eat. It doesn't define what I put in my body, but I love it. And I wait for this all year, and I'm going to do extra work over here to make up for the pumpkin pie I'm going to do. So you could do the same thing with your investments. You can have investments that are more fun and exciting, like pumpkin pie, and they are relegated to a very small part of what you're doing. And it's really there more for entertainment and pleasure than a true investment. Just like my pumpkin pie is there for entertainment and pleasure. It's not there to make me healthier. but 99% of what I do put in my body is there to make me healthier. Our investments should be no different.
No, 100%. I definitely agree with you. Like the way I consider, like, like lastly kind of thing on like Bitcoin is like, I mean, I own physical gold coins, like, that I bought a couple, right? And then I bought silver and stuff like that. And then I bought one of platinum because I was like, that sounds pretty cool, right? And it wasn't like, I think this is going to make me a millionaire. It was just the fact that I was like, that's cool. I want to have one of those, right? And obviously it's gone up in value. But again, it's not what I'm considering my investment to increase my financial portfolio,
It's
right?
not, it's not what your success is riding on.
Right. But it is for me, it is cool to have. And that's how I kind of treat like the part of the Bitcoin that I own. It's like, it's cool to have and it's cool to watch it, and it makes, when I'm like bored, I can check on it and like, oh, that's cool. Or damn, it's down. Right. Which is pretty much every other day. Right. It's up or down. But again, with your financial investments and stuff like that, the next area I wanted to kind of touch on, which you've kind of mentioned a little bit about it, right, is just like your finances, just like your fitness, it's not emotional decisions. Just because there's a new piece of article that comes out on the news, like you said, or you do a piece of research and then you're like, oh wow, I need to change everything. You sometimes need to take emotion out of the equation. I had a person on the podcast, and actually a friend of mine, and she's a fractional CFO. That's her company.
Mills?
Yeah.
Something. Yeah. No, I listened to that episode. That was really good.
Okay. So awesome. So going into that, right? Like the part with being a fractional CFO, just like having someone else help you with your financial, planning and management. It's like we get so emotionally tied to the dollar, right? So if we get in a panic, we sell. When in reality, sometimes that's when you should be buying or just holding, right? And just adapting. And so when you can take your emotion or your emotional intelligence and build around your finances, I feel like that's a huge asset. How do you feel like people can start to work on their emotional intelligence around their finances?
Okay, so one thing you said is really important, but also almost impossible, is taking emotions out of financial decisions. Warren Buffett can do that, and I don't know about anybody else on this planet that is capable. So we have to be mindful of that limitation, that emotions will be a part of our financial decisions, and recognize that will be a bias. And this is to answer your question, this is why it's so important to have a plan. A lot of people don't really invest. They just collect investments for 30 years and hope that they can retire comfortably. Now, hope is great for Hallmark cards. It's a terrible financial strategy. So think about like building a house. You would not want to live in a house, Devin, that was built without a blueprint. But a lot of people build their futures without one, and a lot of people work out without one. Like we can watch people that just meander around the gym. I'm sure when you're looking at your gym, you can look, and in 5 minutes, you can tell who's on a plan and who's just showing up. Now, granted, being at the gym is better than not being at the gym. And that's a big step for some people. But to go from good to great, you have to have a plan. And what a plan does is a few different things. Number one, it creates guardrails. It says, here's what you can do. Here's what you must do. This is what you need to execute to get what you want in the future. It also helps you eliminate mistakes. And another thing that it does, it pulls the future into today. Like a blueprint for a house, it takes the future project that you're building and shows you, here's the actions, here's the activity that you need to do right now to stay on track. Because building wealth, just like building a better body, it's a long process. It can get really, really drudgerous. So you need to have those small wins to say, you know what, I haven't hit my goals, I haven't hit my targets, but this week was a win because I hit these sessions or I hit these diet numbers or whatever the goals are. This week was a win. And what a financial plan does is it creates that same thing where it says, okay, here's your long-term goals. Here's what a win looks like this week, this month. So you know you're on track. You know you're doing the right thing. Does it completely eliminate emotions? No, but it helps take you out of the present and keep you future focused. The other thing I would say is, and this is why I've even told people this before, Devin, is I'm basically a personal trainer for wealth. That's what I do. I'm your accountability. I'm the guy that says, keep going. These are the reps that hurt. These are the reps that also count the most. And to have somebody in your corner, I mean, I'm biased. I think you should have a financial coach, but at least somebody who cares about you and will hold your feet to the fire and said, hey, Devin, this is what you said was important to you. This is what you're doing now is not in alignment with that. Let's get you back on track. Somebody who's gonna look at your actions and say, is this action bring you closer to or further from the goals that you set out for yourself? That's a huge part of what we do, not just the planning, but also the accountability. Because as you've said in some of your other podcasts, we don't have an information problem. We have an execution problem. We're overindulgent in information, but very, very sparse in our implementation. And emotions are often what get in between those two. So a huge part of what we do is help people execute and apply the planning and the knowledge that they have.
No, that's so awesome. And I like that analogy. Basically, you're a personal trainer for your finances, your wealth management, right? Because there are, as you know, we're going into it, there are so many similarities in thought process and strategy and, you know, even our emotional decisions, right? And it did make sense as you started to say it. Obviously, there are some emotional ties to it, but understanding and improving your emotional intelligence in sticking to the plan, not necessarily taking emotion out of the equation, because it is kind of impossible. But it's one of those things where when you do have someone that is in your corner, someone like yourself, it helps alleviate some of those, you know, radical changes or radical decisions that you might make on a whim, and having someone be like, hey, take a breath. It's going to be okay. This is normal, right? This is what has happened, you know, like you said, between, you know, 2008 till now, there's been 4 times that we've had, you know, recessions or dips and stuff, and people don't even note those, right? Unless you're the one actually like yourself looking at all those things, right? So I think that's so awesome. Now, what I do want to ask is, you know, let's say someone, you know, outside of crypto, outside of a blueprint, what is maybe one of the more common financial mishaps or mistakes that, you know, you see people making outside of those two things?
I think one of the biggest, this is more of a perspective thing. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they confuse volatility with risk. So, you know, you look at your mutual fund or like the S&P 500, maybe you've got an index fund or something like that, and you see it bounce all over the place. I mean, just the other day, it was going crazy. And people confuse that with risk. And financial independence is an income issue. It's not a principal problem. When I say principal, I mean that's the value of your investments if you sold them all today. But if you're holding your investments, you're just living off of the income they produce, you shouldn't be worried about selling them, especially somebody who's not that close to retiring. These are income producing assets for the future. But even somebody who's retired, you're going to hold those assets for probably the next 10, 20, 30 years and then pass them on to the next generation. So they should be more concerned about the income that they produce, not their temporary principal value, because one of the biggest risks in retirement is not having your temporary principal go down, but permanently losing the value of your dollar in purchasing power to inflation. And most people do not have a plan for doubling or even tripling their income in retirement. And that's what costs do over a 20, 30-year period. With average inflation, not even what we've seen the past couple of years, with average inflation over a 30-year retirement, costs go up about 2.5 times. And if you ask people, what is your plan for doubling or tripling your income in retirement? Most people are going to give you deer in the headlights look. I'll give you one more. And this is going to sound so simple and be like, what, come on, like easy. Like you shouldn't even be telling us this, but it's important because almost nobody does this, is living within your means. People are so focused on the investment strategy that they ignore the investor behavior. And to say we manage money is a little bit of, it's not misleading, but it's not the whole picture. What we're really doing is managing investors. And the money part is actually fairly easy, but it doesn't matter how good your investments are. If you're not living within your means, there's nothing there to feed it. So that is the number one rule in building wealth. You have to live within your means. You have to have an income that is greater than your ego, or if you want to look at it probably a better way, an ego less than your income, and having a margin there. And people in our country right now, Devin, they don't have a margin. We max out our calendars, our credit cards, our waistlines, and our budget, and we don't have anything left at the end of the month. So that's a really simple thing that a lot of people miss. And that's what gets them into trouble, because now they're looking for these kind of peripheral investment strategies to make up for lost time, or to get rich quick, because they don't have enough margin to build slowly.
No, that's so awesome. I like that whole max out analogy. With that, maybe can you share someone with like that you've worked with, or that was one of your clients, maybe a success story about one of those situations where you've helped transform them through just some mindset shifts?
So I'll give you one that comes to mind, because this is a really good example of slow and steady. So this individual just retired 2 or 3 years ago, multimillionaire, and he drove truck. Never made more than $70,000 a year, mostly $50,000 to $60,000 a year. Now, some people listening might think, okay, I could live off that. Well, this is in Alaska. It ain't cheap to live up here because it gets cold, and electricity and gas are expensive. Everything's expensive here because we have to ship it 3,000 miles. I'm not complaining. I love living here. It's just expensive. He also raised 4 kids on that. His wife stayed home, homeschooled the kids. So he became a multimillionaire, slowly chipping away at this. Never in a single year did it look significantly different than the year before. It was a very, very slow, methodical process. But back in 2000, there's another major market crash where the broad market was basically cut in half during the dot-com bubble bursting, and 9/11 and Enron and all that stuff. And it was a really tough time, and he was thinking like, I'm not doing this anymore. And my dad and I both had discussions with him, and by the time 2008 hit, he was scared, he was uncomfortable, but he had chosen, I'm going to take this path. I've pre-decided, I've committed, this is what I'm going to do. And part of it, going back to your other question about emotions, is I think we set him up for it, because so many people out there are promising this path to wealth and how easy and comfortable it's going to be. And that's like taking a client in right before leg day and telling them how wonderful they're going to feel. And this is going to be great. They're going to have energy. And, after 12 sets of lunges and squats, they're like, you freaking lied to me, and I'm going to stab you as soon as you turn your back on me, because this is not what I signed up for. But if we tell people this is not an easy path, this will not go quickly, but it will be worth it, but you're going to pay the price along the way, but the payoff in the end is absolutely worth it. Like, that's the story we need to have. And again, it doesn't take people's emotions out of it, but it gives them the emotional construct to deal with the difficulty they're going to face, because there is going to be sacrifice. There is going to be pain. There is going to be discomfort. I don't know if you're a boxing fan or not, Devin, but one time Muhammad Ali was being interviewed. This is in the late 60s. He'd just beaten Joe Frazier, I believe. And they asked him, how many push-ups and sit-ups do you do in a workout? Because Ali he was quick. He had great form, but he was not the most powerful fighter. He would wear down his opponents, and he was known for his conditioning. And they asked him, this interview asked him, so how many reps do you do? And he said, I don't know. And the guy's like, you don't count your push-ups and your sit-ups? He's like, I don't start counting until they start hurting, because those are the only ones that actually count. Those are the ones that matter. And if we have that mindset in our investing, like when it hurts, that's when our investments matter the most, because like you said, that's when we make the most money. That's when prices are the lowest, but it is difficult. And for this individual, his mindset shifted during those 2 market crashes. And I'm not going to say he's been comfortable the entire time, but his mindset is, I will endure this because I know it's worth it on the other side.
No, that's so awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, I have heard that Ali like quote, and it is so true. I used to tell people that with personal training too. I mean, because that's, people would ask, they would say, how come the workouts never feel like they're getting easier? And I would tell them, like, then I wouldn't be doing my job.
Exactly.
Right? I was like, we have a game plan for today. And if you just start crushing the game plan, well, then I need to turn it up a little bit. So like, I was like, you got to think each one of your workouts is an adaptive game plan, right? one, if something's taken and we can't get to it, I need to have one or two other things to replace that exercise. Just like if you're crushing what I thought you were gonna, hit today, it's like all of a sudden I'm gonna start tweaking it up a little bit so that you never. It's the goal isn't to make you feel like you're weak or never getting stronger, but the goal is to never have you walk out of the gym and be like, wow, that was an easy workout today, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, the workouts that matter are the workouts that you have to push through, right? Because you have to think that you're forged in the fire, essentially, right? Like that's just where the change is made. And so one of the things that I want to kind of touch on too, just kind of relating to the story you were just telling, is it can be overwhelming with your finances, right? When you start to really try to think about it and you're trying to plan it out and everything like that, but also maybe even like a couple in trying to plan their finances together, right? So how would you, or what advice would you give someone to, let's say a single person, then say a couple, right? What advice would you give to them just to take that first step if they're feeling overwhelmed? And then for a couple, how would you avoid any conflicts about money?
I wouldn't avoid any conflicts about money. I think that's where a lot of financial problems in marriage happen. And I'll be honest, man, I've been married. We've got 6 kids, been married for almost 20 years. I'm not without financial conflicts in our marriage too. We have different opinions. The worst thing you can do is not talk about it. And I think for a married couple, that's the first place to start, is start normalizing conversations about money. So even though I grew up in the financial industry and had a good background, my wife grew up very differently from me. And not to say that my ideas were right and hers were wrong. They were just incredibly different. Our perspectives were sometimes polar opposite. So a week after we got married, we were married on September 30th, 2005. And that next Friday, we started taking a financial class together through our church. And we joke about it because that first year was a little rough, 2 very different lives colliding. I think finances was the only thing we didn't fight about that first year of marriage. And it wasn't because we had this great epiphany, but we normalized the conversation about that. And I'll be honest, 6 kids later, we have to continue to make that commitment because so many other things got mixed in, and the things we need to discuss have changed, and we're having to continue to work on those habits. I mean, kind of like the analogy you just gave, like if you go back to what's easy, then you're not growing and improving. So we're continuing to being stretched. So married couple, talk about it. Just talk about finances. I don't care what you talk about, but start that discussion to make it normal to engage in dialogue in a healthy way about finances, because you will talk about finances one way or another. But if you don't plan it out, it'll happen under only stressful conversations. And then it's really hard to have healthy conversations because emotions are already heightened. We've already gone over why we don't want that. So you want to bring up those conversations about money when everybody's calm, and it could be as simple as something, you sit down with your spouse and saying, hey, honey, like if you never had to go to work ever again, another day in your life, neither of us ever needed a paycheck ever again, we were financially independent, what would you want your life to look like? What would you be doing? Like, what would you want us to do? Paint me a picture of that vision, like something like that, because what it does, it starts clarifying your long-term goals. It also helps you understand what makes your spouse tick, and you'll be surprised what you might hear.
No, I think that's awesome though, because I mean, when I was saying avoiding conflict, I think what I meant was like there's going to be conflict, but I guess to the degree of conflict, right? So I think, like you were saying, the biggest issue marriages have is around financial aspects, and that's the conflict I was kind of referring to. There's going to be disagreements and stuff, but I even from my own like marriage and stuff, I know that the big conflicts were before we started to normalize conversations about money. And there might be miniature quote unquote conflicts, but I just call those conversations, right?
Well, and yeah, and I knew what you meant. I just wanted to be clear for our listeners.
No,
but conflict is okay. Combat is not. And that's what we want to avoid. And if we have normal conversations about money, even when we're having more conflict and it is maybe more emotionally heightened, you're still less likely to go into combat mode because you've been there before under normal circumstances. And And we don't want those conversations to catch us off guard. The other thing is you start building up relationship capital in that area. And that's what I was thinking when you talked about your clients back when you used to train people, how they would still finish the set. You didn't have to say anything. Part of the reason that happened was relationship capital. You didn't have to say, you didn't have to threaten them, but deep down inside, they knew that you cared. They didn't want to disappoint you and let you down. That's relationship capital. And that's what this business, my business, if your financial planner is doing it right, is built on relationship capital. And with your spouse, the same thing. So you have to have those conversations when they're safe. So when you do have times of conflict, because they will come up, you're not, if somebody's been married for more than 17 seconds, you already know you're not going to agree on everything ever or all the time. So you will have conflict, but you're less likely for that conflict to go into combat.
No, definitely. No, that's so awesome. Before we wrap up, and I already know you got a preview of it, but typically I like to ask the question, right? And so on Chad Hufford's legacy wall, right? It could be anything. It could be about, your background in finances. It could be about fitness. It could be about just life, right? What would that one message that you would leave for the up and coming generations be?
I would say that your life, the trajectory of your future is built on your choices and your decisions. And you can't control what goes on in this crazy world around you, but you can control how you respond to it. And if you are in a position where you find yourself in a hole, financially, physically, relationally, whatever, it may or may not be your fault that you're there. That doesn't really matter. It is your responsibility to dig yourself out. And what you do matters. So to sum that up, worry less about what you can't control and focus most of your time and energy on the things that you can control.
I like that. That's awesome. Well, where can people connect with you and learn what you got going on over there?
Well, veritasalaska.com is our website, and I founded us here in Alaska. We work with folks all over the United States. So if you're down in warmer climates where the sun actually works, we can still help you. So veritasalaska.com and then veritas.alaska on Instagram, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. And guys, that will all be in the show notes. I know you guys got a lot of information from this episode, and I know a lot of you guys are into fitness. So if your finances didn't start to make sense before this episode, I know that you have a better understanding from the different analogies that Chad was able to bring to you guys. So make sure you guys give him a follow, check him out, and make sure you guys share this episode with a friend, right? We are going into the new year, and it's important to start your year off right? Start it off with building a game plan. Really think about this stuff instead of being reactive, be proactive. But Chad, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out and honestly giving the listeners an amazing episode.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Negative vibes, only positive thoughts, just in the game of life. Mindset causes stress. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to